Admiral Kethvar stood in the great hall of the Zephyrian War Council, his old battle scars visible under the bright lights. The massive room on Nexus Prime buzzed with the voices of generals and admirals from across the Empire. 12 star systems bowed to Zephyrian might, and hundreds of alien species served under their rule. Today, they would decide the fate of another world. The veteran admiral's hands shook slightly as he prepared to speak. Not from fear, but from age and too many battles. His purple skin showed the marks of laser burns and plasma wounds from decades. Of conquest. He had served the Empire faithfully, but what he had seen near the small blue planet troubled him deeply. Honored generals, Kethve began, his voice steady despite his concerns. I bring urgent news about the humans of Earth. We must not treat them like the others we have conquered. General Morthic, the Empire's chief strategist, rolled his 4 eyes in annoyance. The young general had never lost a battle and believed nothing could challenge Zephyrian power. His green skin gleamed with the oils that showed his high rank, and his voice carried the arrogance of easy victories. Another primitive species that fears our ships, Morthic said with a laugh. What makes these humans different from the Altarians we crushed last cycle? Or the Vorthan Empire we destroyed the cycle before? Kethver stepped forward, his old warrior's instincts telling him to make them understand. I was there, Morthic. I saw them fight. These humans detected my cloaked scout ship when no other species has managed such a feat. They forced me to retreat using weapons we considered primitive. The hall fell silent for a moment. No one had ever forced the legendary Kethvar to retreat. From anything. His reputation was built on victories against impossible odds. If he spoke of retreat, something serious had happened. Tell us what you saw, commanded Emperor Vexilon from his throne. The ruler of the Empire rarely spoke during war councils, but Kethvar's words had caught his attention. The Emperor's silver skin reflected the light as he leaned forward, his 6 arms folded in careful attention. Kethvar activated a holographic display showing the outer edge of Earth's solar system. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel, looking peaceful and harmless. Around it, small ships moved in patterns that seemed random to most observers. I approached their system for standard reconnaissance, Kethvar explained. My ship was fully cloaked using our best stealth technology. No species has ever detected us when properly hidden. But within minutes of entering their space, human ships began moving toward my position. Admiral Zixtal, an old friend of Kethvar, spoke up. Perhaps your cloak malfunctioned. It happens to the best ships sometimes. I checked everything twice, Kethvar replied firmly. The cloak worked perfectly. These humans found me through methods I do not understand. They moved with purpose, not random searching. They knew exactly where I was. The display changed to show the battle that followed. Human ships, small and crude by Zephyrian standards, swarmed toward Kethvar's position. Their weapons looked primitive, but their tactics were unlike anything the Empire had encountered. They used nuclear missiles. Kethvar continued, weapons we consider ancient and worthless. But they did not fire them directly at my ship. Instead, they detonated them in a pattern around my position, creating electromagnetic pulses that interfered with my ship's systems. General Morthic laughed again, but the sound held less confidence than before. Surely your ship could handle such primitive weapons. The weapons themselves were not the threat, Kethvar said, his voice growing more serious. It was how they used them. These humans studied my ship's movements and predicted where I would go. They forced me into positions where their primitive weapons became effective. When I tried to retreat, they were already waiting with more traps. The old admiral paused, remembering the fear he had felt when human tactics began to work. I have fought the greatest warriors in the galaxy. I have conquered worlds that had technology almost equal to our own. But these humans fought like nothing I have ever seen. They showed no fear of death. When their ships were damaged, the crews kept fighting. When they were outnumbered, they became more dangerous, not less. Emperor Vexilon shifted on his throne, his interest clearly growing. "What do you recommend, old warrior?" Kethfer took a breath, knowing his next words would not be popular. "We should approach them with respect. Perhaps offer alliance instead of conquest. These humans have something we have not seen in other species. They adapt quickly, they show no fear, and they think in ways that surprise even experienced commanders." The hall erupted in angry voices. Generals and admirals shouted over each other, their pride wounded by the suggestion that any species deserved respect from the mighty Zephyrian Empire. "Alliance?" General Morthic's voice cut through the noise. "With a species that has not even achieved faster-than-light travel? Kethfer, your age has made you soft. Fear has clouded your judgment. I have never counseled retreat from weakness." Kethfer replied with dignity, "I counsel caution from wisdom. These humans are different. They will not break easily like the others." Admiral Zixtal stood beside his old friend. "Kethvar has served the Empire for 60 cycles. His warnings have saved countless lives in the past. Perhaps we should listen." But the younger officers had already made up their minds. They saw only a small planet with primitive technology. They could not imagine how such a weak species could threaten the mighty empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Emperor Vexilon raised one of his arms, and the hall fell silent. "The War Council will vote. All in favor of standard conquest procedures for the human planet." Hands and claws and tentacles rose throughout the hall. Only Kethfer and a few of his oldest allies abstained from voting. The decision was clear and overwhelming. "The matter is settled," the Emperor declared. "We will send 50 ships under Fleet Commander Zarketh. The humans will surrender or be destroyed like all the others who have opposed us." General Morthic smiled with satisfaction. "Let this serve as a lesson to any other species that might consider resistance. The Empire's mercy has limits." As the council dispersed, Kethfer remained in the Great Hall, staring at the holographic image of Earth. He had done his duty by warning them. Now he could only hope that 50 ships would be enough, though something deep in his warrior's heart told him they would not be. Meanwhile, on the distant blue planet, Colonel Jake Martinez stood in the command center of humanity's Stellar Defense Initiative. Banks of computers hummed around him as technicians monitored space for any sign of alien activity. Dr. Lisa Parker worked at a nearby station, her team analyzing data from their recent encounter with an unknown scout ship. The alien vessel used technology we've never seen before, Dr. Parker reported to Colonel Martinez. But we tracked it successfully and forced it to retreat. Our new detection systems worked exactly as planned. Martinez nodded grimly. "If they sent one scout, they'll send a fleet next time. Are we ready?" Chief Engineer Kate Morrison looked up from her workstation, where she had been modifying human weapon systems. "We've learned everything we could from the encounter. Our ships are faster now, and our weapons hit harder. But if they come in large numbers, we'll be ready," Martinez said with quiet confidence. "We've been preparing for this day since we first detected alien signals. They think we're primitive, but they're about to learn what humans can do when we fight for our home." The preparations continued as Earth's defenders worked through the night, not knowing that their fate had already been decided in a council chamber light years away. The Zephyrian Empire had made its choice, and now both civilizations would face the consequences of that decision. Fleet Commander Zarketh watched the blue planet grow larger on his command screen as 50 Zephyrian warships moved through space toward Earth. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. The same fleet had crushed the Altarian resistance in just 3 days. These primitive humans would surrender even faster. Open communications to the planet, Zarketh ordered his communications officer. The alien's tentacles danced over the control panel as he established a connection to Earth. The main screen flickered and showed a human female in a blue uniform. Her short brown hair was neat and professional, but her eyes held a hardness that surprised the Zephyrian commander. This was Admiral Susan Clark, though Zarketh did not yet know her name. "I am Fleet Commander Zarketh of the Zephyrian Empire," he announced in the standard conquest format. "Your world is now property of the Empire. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will burn your planet to ash." Admiral Clark stared back at him without fear. Her voice was calm and steady when she replied, "This is Admiral Clark of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered our space without permission and threatened our people. You have 30 minutes to withdraw, or we will consider this an act of war." Zarketh laughed, the sound echoing through. His ship's bridge. His crew joined in the laughter. A handful of primitive ships threatening the mighty Zephyrian fleet seemed like the funniest joke they had ever heard. "You dare threaten us?" Zarketh wiped tears from his eyes. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Your crude ships are no match for our power. I will demonstrate our strength so you understand your place." The fleet commander targeted the human mining stations orbiting the outer planets. These facilities looked defenseless and would make perfect examples. 3 Zephyrian warships moved toward the stations, their weapons charging for the killing blow. "Fire," Zarketh commanded. Energy beams lanced out toward the mining stations. But as the weapons struck, the stations exploded in brilliant flashes that seemed too large for simple mining equipment. The explosions created massive electromagnetic pulses that washed over the attacking ships. "Commander!" His sensor officer called out in alarm. Those were not mining stations. They were weapons platforms disguised to look like civilian targets. Before Zarketh could respond, new contacts appeared on his sensors. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids where they had been hiding. These vessels were smaller than Zephyrian warships, but moved with surprising speed and grace. Captain Tony Rodriguez led the attack in his ship, the TDS Defiance. He had studied every piece of data from Admiral Kethfer's earlier encounter with human forces. The aliens expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered, with direct attacks and predictable tactics. "Ghost Squadron, execute Pattern Delta," Rodriguez commanded over the communications link. 12 human fighters spread out, in a formation that looked random but was carefully planned. The human ships did not charge directly at the alien fleet. Instead, they darted between asteroids, using the rocky debris as cover. Their weapons were indeed primitive compared to Zephyrian technology, but Dr. Lisa Parker's modifications had made them devastatingly effective against alien shields. "Target their shield generators," Rodriguez ordered. "Hit and run, just like we practiced." Human missiles streaked toward the Zephyrian ships. The aliens' defensive systems easily shot down most of the incoming weapons, but a few got through. When they exploded, the alien shields flickered and died. "Impossible," Zarketh muttered. "Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." His tactical officer checked the readings twice before reporting. "Commander, their missiles are specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in our shield frequency. They must have studied our technology from previous encounters." The battle escalated quickly as more human ships joined the fight. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell's psychological warfare tactics confused the Zephyrian formations. Human ships would appear to retreat in panic, drawing alien vessels into pursuit, only to lead them into carefully prepared ambushes. "They fight like cowards," one of Zarketh's officers complained as another group of human ships fled from their advance. "No," Zarkith said slowly, beginning to understand. "They fight like hunters. We are not the predators here. We are the prey." The truth of his words became clear when his pursuing ships found themselves surrounded near Jupiter's largest moons. Hidden weapon platforms activated all around them, and what had seemed like a retreat became a deadly trap. Colonel Jake Martinez watched the battle from Earth's command center. Strategy Omega was working perfectly. The aliens' overconfidence was their greatest weakness, just as he had predicted. "Phase 2, Martinez ordered. "Release the kinetic bombardment platforms." Chief Engineer Kate Morrison had spent months preparing this surprise. Modified asteroid mining equipment launched massive chunks of rock at incredible speeds toward the alien fleet. The Zephyrians could easily destroy such crude projectiles, but the sheer number overwhelmed their defensive systems. Incoming projectiles. The Zephyrian sensor officer reported. Thousands of them, moving at high velocity. Zarkith ordered his ships to shoot down the rocks, but for every one they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The kinetic impacts against their hulls caused no serious damage, but they disrupted formations and created chaos in the alien ranks. While the Zephyrians dealt with the rock bombardment, Captain Rodriguez led his fighters in close-range attacks. The human ships moved through the alien formation like angry wasps, striking vital systems and disappearing before the larger vessels could respond. "Sir, we're losing ships," Zarkith's tactical officer reported with growing panic. "The humans are targeting our command vessels specifically." 8 Zephyrian warships had already been destroyed or disabled. The humans seemed to know exactly which ships controlled the others and focused their attacks accordingly. Lieutenant Commander Bell had studied alien communications during previous encounters and identified the command frequencies they used. Most shocking moment came when 3 human ships, heavily damaged and unable to escape, turned directly toward Zephyrian vessels and accelerated to maximum speed. The aliens watched in horror as the human crews deliberately crashed their ships into alien hulls. "They sacrificed themselves without hesitation," Zarkith whispered. "What kind of species does this?" The ramming attacks destroyed 2 more Zephyrian ships and damaged several others. But more importantly, they demonstrated something that shook the alien crews to their core. These humans would rather die fighting than surrender. As the battle continued, Zarkith realized his fleet was losing. The primitive humans had turned every advantage the Zephyrians possessed against them. Their superior technology meant nothing when the enemy refused to fight by conventional rules. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance," Zarkith finally ordered. His pride screamed against the decision, but his tactical sense told him to preserve what remained of his fleet. The human ships did not pursue the retreating aliens. Instead, they regrouped near Earth's orbital defenses, ready to continue the fight if the Zephyrians returned. Admiral Clark appeared on Zarkith's screen again. Her uniform was rumpled, and she looked tired, but her eyes still held the same determination as before. "You have 15 minutes remaining," she said simply. "Use them wisely." Zarkith stared at the human admiral in shock. After losing 20 ships and suffering humiliating defeat, he was being given another chance to withdraw. These humans could have pressed their advantage and destroyed more of his fleet, but they chose mercy instead. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you let us leave?" Admiral Clark considered the question carefully before answering. "Because we are not conquerors, Commander. We are defenders. Leave our space and do not return. Tell your empire that Earth is not defenseless." The Zephyrian fleet retreated beyond the edge of the solar system. Zarkith composed his report to High Command with shaking hands. How could he explain that 50 warships had been defeated by a handful of primitive vessels? On Earth, the celebration was brief. Admiral Clark knew the aliens would return with more ships and greater fury. Colonel Martinez was already planning the next phase of humanity's defense. They underestimated us once, Martinez told his staff. They won't make that mistake again. We need to be ready for everything they can throw at us. Dr. Lisa Parker analyzed the wreckage from destroyed Zephyrian ships, learning everything she could about their technology. Chief Engineer Morrison began designing new weapons based on what they had discovered during the battle. The first contact had become the first victory, but everyone knew the real war was just beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would not accept defeat from a species they considered primitive. They would return with overwhelming force, and humanity would need every advantage they could gain out as night fell over Earth's command centers, technicians, and scientists worked through the darkness, preparing for the storm they knew was coming. The aliens had learned that humans could fight, but they had not yet learned the true meaning of human determination. Emperor Vexilon crushed the report tablet in his 6 hands as he read about the defeat at Earth. 20 ships lost to primitive humans. The great hall of the palace echoed with his roar of rage. Servants scattered as furniture flew through the air, smashed by the Emperor's fury. Impossible, he snarled. 50 ships defeated by crude human vessels. Zarkith must be a coward or a fool. General Morthic stood at attention, his green skin pale with fear. The young general had assured the Emperor that humans would surrender, without a fight. Now he faced the consequences of his overconfidence. "My lord," Morthic said carefully, "perhaps we underestimated their defensive capabilities. I recommend sending a larger force to ensure complete victory." The Emperor's silver skin glowed with anger as he turned toward his general. "You recommended 50 ships would be enough to conquer any primitive world. Now you speak of larger forces after this humiliation. I will personally lead the second battle fleet," War Marshal Dextara announced as she entered the hall. The Empire's most feared military commander had arrived from the outer territories, where she had been crushing a rebellion. Her black armor bore the scars of countless battles, and her reputation for ruthless tactics was known throughout the galaxy. Dextara's species had no eyes in the traditional sense. Instead, heat-sensing organs across her face allowed her to see the warm bodies of her enemies before she killed them. She had burned entire worlds to ash when their populations refused to surrender. 200 ships under my command will reduce the planet to molten rock, Dextara continued. No survivors, no mercy. Other species will learn what happens when they resist the Empire. Emperor Vexilon nodded slowly, his anger cooling into cold determination. Do it. Make an example of these humans that will be remembered for 1,000 years. On Earth, the victory celebration lasted only 1 day. Admiral Susan Clark called an emergency meeting of all defense commanders. The holographic display in the command center showed intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The news was not good. Our sources confirm the Empire is mobilizing a massive fleet, Admiral Clark announced to the assembled officers. At least 200 ships, possibly more. They're bringing their best commander and their most advanced weapons. Colonel Jake Martinez studied the tactical displays with growing concern. 200 ships is 4 times what we just fought. Our tactics worked once, but they won't underestimate us again. President Mary Johnson joined the meeting by secure video link from the Capitol. Her face showed the strain of leading humanity through its first interstellar war. What do our scientists say about our chances? Dr. Lisa Parker stepped forward, her hands full of data tablets and technical readouts. We've learned a lot from a captured alien technology. Our weapons are more effective now, and we understand their shield systems better. But we need time to build more ships and develop new defenses. How much time? President Johnson asked. 6 months minimum, Dr. Parker replied. A year would be better. Defense Secretary Paul Wright shook his head grimly. Intelligence suggests They'll return in 3 months at most. We need to work with what we have." Chief Engineer Kate Morrison had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. "We captured enough alien components to build new types of weapons. I have teams working around the clock on mobile manufacturing platforms. If we can't build a bigger fleet, we can at least build a smarter one." Admiral Clark made the decision that would shape humanity's defense strategy. We go underground, literally. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris becomes a potential weapons platform or hiding place. We make the entire solar system into a fortress. The next 3 months transformed Earth's solar system beyond recognition. Human engineering teams worked in shifts around the clock, turning asteroids into hidden bases and moons into weapons platforms. Captain Tony Rodriguez, now promoted to Commodore, trained thousands of new pilots using combat simulators based on real battle data. Dr. Alex Turner's breakthrough in quantum communications allowed human forces to coordinate instantly across vast distances. No matter how far apart they were, human ships could share information and coordinate attacks as if they were in the same room. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Bell expanded his psychological warfare program, studying alien behavior, patterns, and developing tactics specifically designed to exploit Zephyrian military doctrine. His teams learned to think like their enemies so they could stay one step ahead. When the second battle fleet arrived at Earth's solar system, War Marshal Dextara expected to find a helpless planet defended by a few crude ships. Instead, her sensors detected defensive installations throughout the system. Every major asteroid had been fortified. Every moon bristled with weapons. Impressive for primitives, Dextara admitted to her staff officers. But impressive defenses mean nothing against overwhelming firepower. Begin the assault. Target every defensive position and reduce them to debris. The Zephyrian fleet advanced in perfect formation, their weapon systems charging for a devastating bombardment. But as they moved deeper into the solar system, human tactics began to take effect. Commodore Rodriguez led the first wave of attacks from hidden positions within the asteroid belt. His Ghost Squadron had been expanded to include 50 of humanity's best pilots, all flying ships equipped with experimental cloaking technology, reverse-engineered from captured alien systems. "Remember the plan," Rodriguez transmitted to his pilots. "Hit their command ships first, then fade back into the asteroids. Make them chase us into the prepared zones." The human fighters struck like invisible lightning, appearing from nowhere to damage Zephyrian command vessels before vanishing again. Dextara's perfect formations began to break apart as individual ships lost contact with their commanders. "Find those fighters," Dextara ordered. "I want every asteroid in this system blasted to particles." But destroying the asteroids only revealed more surprises. Hidden within the rocky debris were thousands of automated weapons platforms, each one programmed to target specific types of alien ships. As the Zephyrians destroyed asteroids, the weapons inside activated and began firing. Dr. Turner's quantum communication network allowed every human weapon to share targeting data instantly. When one platform identified a weak point in an alien ship's shields, every other platform in the area focused on that same weakness. The battle became a nightmare of attrition for the Zephyrian forces. They could destroy human weapons platforms, but more always appeared from new hiding places. They could chase human fighters, but the small ships vanished into prepared ambush zones where larger vessels waited. Chief Engineer Morrison's mobile manufacturing platforms proved their worth when several human ships were damaged in battle. Instead of retreating for repairs, the vessels docked with hidden facilities. They fixed their damage and upgraded their weapons while the battle continued. "They're rebuilding faster than we can destroy them," one of Dextara's officers reported, with growing panic. "Every time we eliminate a defensive position, 2 more appear in its place." The turning point came when Admiral Clark led humanity's newest weapon into battle. The TDS Retribution was humanity's first true battlecruiser, built using 6 months of captured alien technology and combat experience. The ship matched Zephyrian vessels in firepower, while surpassing them in speed and maneuverability. "All human forces, this is Admiral Clark," she broadcast on the quantum network. "Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Hit them with everything we have." Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, converging on the Zephyrian fleet from every direction at once. The aliens found themselves surrounded by enemies, who seemed to appear from empty space. Colonel Martinez's intelligence network had studied alien communication patterns for months. At the crucial moment, human cyber warfare specialists jammed Zephyrian communications, leaving their ships unable to coordinate their defense. War Marshal Dextara watched her perfect battle plan collapse into chaos. Ships crashed into each other as they lost contact with their commanders. Weapons fired at empty space as targeting systems failed. The disciplined Zephyrian formations dissolved into panicked clusters of confused vessels. "Impossible," Dextara muttered as human ships systematically isolated and destroyed her most powerful vessels. "They fight like demons. How can primitives coordinate such complex tactics?" When her own flagship suffered critical damage and human fighters closed in for the kill, Dextara made the hardest decision of her military career. "All ships, general retreat. Withdraw to the edge of the system immediately." The second battle. Fleet limped away from Earth, having lost over half its ships and achieved nothing except a deeper understanding of human determination. News of the defeat spread quickly through the Empire's communication networks. On distant worlds, species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians whispered of the humans who had defeated the Empire's best fleet. Some began to plan their own rebellions, inspired by humanity's example. Admiral Kethfor, the old veteran who had tried to warn the Empire, received the battle reports in his retirement quarters. He felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Too many good soldiers had died because younger officers refused to listen to experience. "The humans fight as I predicted," he told his aide. "But now the Empire will respond with E." War Marshal Dextara's return to the Empire brought chaos to the capital. 200 ships reduced to fewer than 90 survivors, limping home with battle damage and broken spirits. The news spread through the Empire's territories like wildfire. And for the first time in centuries, people questioned Zephyrian invincibility. Emperor Vexilon stood in his private chambers, staring out at the city below where protests had begun in the alien districts. Species that had served the Empire for generations now whispered of rebellion. The human victories had given them hope that the mighty Zephyrians could be defeated. "My lord," General Morphic entered carefully, "the High Council demands an explanation. They want to know how a primitive species has humiliated our forces." Twice, the Emperor's 6 arms trembled with rage. "Explanation? The explanation is that my generals are incompetent fools who cannot defeat savages with crude weapons. The humans are not as primitive as we believed," Dextara said from behind her medical bandages. The War Marshal had barely survived when her flagship was nearly destroyed. "They learn from every encounter. They adapt faster than any species we have conquered." Morthic's green skin flushed darker with anger. "You sound like old Kethfor with his warnings about human cunning. They are still just one planet against an entire empire." "Then prove it," Emperor Vexilon commanded. "Gather every available ship, the Imperial Guard fleet, the home defense squadrons, everything. 500 vessels will reduce Earth to cosmic dust." The massive mobilization took 2 months to complete. Ships arrived from every corner of the Empire, creating the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. The sight of so many warships in one place filled the Emperor with confidence that this time Victory was certain, but the Empire faced problems beyond. Simple military planning. Other conquered species watched the preparations and began their own secret plans. On Altair Prime, underground resistance fighters sabotaged weapons factories. On Vorthan colonies, workers staged strikes that slowed ship production. The human example had inspired a galaxy-wide movement against Zephyrian rule. Meanwhile, humanity had not been idle during the 2 months of preparation. Dr. Lisa Parker's research teams achieved their greatest breakthrough yet, successfully reverse engineering alien faster-than-light travel technology. Human engineers improved the design, making it more efficient and reliable than the original Zephyrian systems. "We're no longer trapped in our solar system," Dr. Parker announced to Admiral Clark and the Defense Council. "Our ships can travel between stars just like theirs." Admiral Clark studied the implications of this development. How many ships can we build with this technology? Chief Engineer Kate Morrison consulted her production reports. "We have enough alien components to outfit 50 vessels with FTL drives. Our manufacturing platforms can build the ships themselves, but we need time." "We don't have time," Colonel Martinez interjected. "Intelligence reports suggest they're bringing everything they have for the final assault. This will be their largest fleet ever." President Johnson joined the meeting from her secure bunker beneath the Capitol. The stress of leading humanity through multiple alien invasions had aged her visibly, but her determination remained strong. "What about our allies?" she asked. "The resistance movements we've been secretly supporting?" Lieutenant Commander Bell smiled for the first time in weeks. "They're ready to act when we give the signal. Sabotage operations are planned throughout Zephyrian space. If we can coordinate properly, the Empire will face rebellions on dozens of worlds simultaneously." Dr. Alex Turner had expanded his quantum communication network beyond the solar system, creating secret links with resistance groups across the galaxy. For the first time, conquered species could communicate instantly without Zephyrian monitoring. Commodore Rodriguez commanded humanity's new deep space fleet, 50 vessels equipped with the most advanced technology human science could produce. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who understood they might never see Earth again. "Our mission is simple," Rodriguez told his captains during their final briefing. "We take the fight to them before they can bring it to us. Hit their supply lines, disrupt their formations, and give the resistance groups time to act." The Imperial Guard fleet departed Nexus Prime with Emperor Vexilon himself aboard the command ship. The ruler had decided to personally oversee the destruction of Earth, wanting to witness the moment when human resistance finally ended. "Today we restore the Empire's honor," Vexilon announced to his assembled commanders. "No mercy for the humans. No survivors to spread tales of resistance. Their planet will become a monument to the price of defying Zephyrian power." But as the massive fleet traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, Commodore Rodriguez's forces struck the first blow. Human ships appeared throughout Zephyrian territory, hitting supply depots and communication stations with devastating precision. The attacks came as a complete surprise to the Empire. They had never imagined that humans could develop faster than light, travel so quickly, much less use it for offensive operations. Suddenly, nowhere in Zephyrian space was safe from human retaliation. "Sir, we're receiving reports of attacks on 17 different worlds," the Emperor's communication officer reported with growing panic. "Human ships are hitting targets throughout the Empire." Admiral Kethver, brought out of retirement to serve as a strategic advisor, studied the attack patterns with professional interest. "They learned well from our own tactics. Strike the enemy's supply lines and communication networks before engaging the main force." The human attacks triggered the coordinated uprising that Lieutenant Commander Bell had been planning for months. On world after world, resistance fighters emerged from hiding to sabotage Imperial installations. The Altarians destroyed 3 major shipyards. The Vorthans captured their planetary government centers. Dozens of other species joined the rebellion, inspired by human courage and supported by human weapons. Emperor Vexilon watched his empire crumble in real time as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Impossible, he raged. How can primitives coordinate such complex operations? They are not primitives anymore, Kethver said quietly. They have become what we once were, a young, dynamic species with everything to fight for and nothing to lose. The Imperial Guard fleet arrived at Earth to find a solar system that looked completely different from their intelligence reports. Human defensive positions had multiplied dramatically, and new types of ships patrolled the outer planets. But the most shocking discovery came when the Zephyrian fleet tried to exit hyperspace. Human ships were waiting for them, having predicted their arrival route through careful analysis of Imperial navigation patterns. Admiral Clark led the ambush from the bridge of the TDS Retribution, now upgraded with the best human and alien technology available. All units, this is Clark. Execute Operation Shieldbreaker. Hit them while they're still recovering from hyperspace. The battle began before the Imperial Guard fleet could properly deploy. Human ships attacked while the Zephyrian vessels were still vulnerable from their journey through hyperspace. Energy weapons lanced through space as fighters swarmed around the larger Imperial ships. Dr. Turner's quantum communication network allowed human forces to coordinate their assault with mathematical precision. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship was positioned. When one human vessel was destroyed, others immediately moved to cover the gap in their formation. Engineer Morrison's latest innovation proved devastating to the Imperial fleet. Human ships fired what appeared to be simple projectile weapons, but the projectiles contained miniaturized quantum computers that could hack into Zephyrian systems. Alien ships found their own weapons turning against their allies as human viruses took control of their targeting systems. "They're using our own ships against us," one of the Emperor's tactical officers reported in horror. "Their computer viruses are spreading through our entire fleet." Colonel Martinez watched the battle from Earth's command center, coordinating the global defense network with the space-based forces. All ground batteries, prepare for bombardment support. If any Imperial ships break through, we need to be ready. The tide of battle turned when human fighters led by Commodore Rodriguez's best pilots penetrated the Imperial formation and targeted the command ships directly. Using tactics developed from months of studying Zephyrian hierarchy, they identified and destroyed the vessels controlling the alien fleet. Emperor Vexilon's own ship came under direct attack as human fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. The vessel's massive guns could not target the small, fast-moving ships that darted between its weapon turrets. Protect the Emperor. Admiral Kethvar commanded the remaining loyal ships. But there were too few left, and they were scattered across too wide an area to mount an effective defense. When the Imperial flagship's shields finally failed and human boarding pods attached to its hull, Emperor Vexilon faced a choice he had never imagined possible: surrender or die fighting a species he had dismissed as primitive savages. The once mighty Zephyrian Empire was collapsing, and humanity had become the catalyst for the greatest galactic revolution in recorded history. Emperor Vexilon watched the display screens in his command center as human boarding pods attached to his flagship like metal parasites. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as his crew prepared for close combat. The ruler of 12 star systems never imagined he would die at the hands of primitives from a backwater planet. "All security teams to the boarding points," Admiral Kethvar commanded. The old veteran had taken control of the ship's defenses while the Emperor sat in shock. "Silence. Seal all critical areas and prepare for hand-to-hand combat." Human soldiers burst through the airlock doors with weapons that combined Earth technology with captured alien components. They moved with the confidence of warriors who had fought impossible battles and won. Leading them was Captain Tony Rodriguez, no longer just a fighter pilot, but a combat veteran who had learned to fight in space stations and starship corridors. "Secure the bridge," Rodriguez ordered his team through their communication system. "Remember, we want prisoners, not bodies. These people have information we need." The fighting through the ship's corridors was fierce but brief. Human soldiers used tactics they had learned from months of studying alien psychology. They moved fast, struck hard, and showed mercy to enemies who surrendered. This confused the Zephyrian crew, who expected humans to kill without mercy like other conquerors they had known. When the human soldiers reached the bridge, they found Emperor Vexilon seated on his throne with Admiral Kethver standing beside him. Both aliens had laid down their weapons, recognizing that further resistance was hopeless. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force," the human officer announced. "Emperor Vexilon, you are now our prisoner." "Admiral Kethver, we remember your warnings about underestimating humanity. You have the option to help us end this war peacefully." Kethver looked at the young human captain with something approaching respect. "You fight well for primitives. I told my people you would be dangerous enemies. They should have listened." "Admiral." Susan Clark arrived on the captured flagship within hours, leading a diplomatic team that included representatives from the resistance movements across the galaxy. The bridge of the once mighty Imperial command ship became an impromptu peace conference. "The war is over," Admiral Clark announced to the surviving Zephyrian commanders. "Your fleets are destroyed or surrendered. Your empire is in rebellion. On every world. You have one choice: negotiate a peaceful transition or watch everything burn." Emperor Vexilon finally spoke, his voice hollow with defeat. "What are your terms, human?" President Mary Johnson appeared on the communication screen from Earth, flanked by representatives from dozens of formerly conquered species, the Altarians, the Vorthans, and many others who had suffered under Zephyrian rule, now stood as equals in the new galactic order. "Complete independence for all conquered worlds," President Johnson stated clearly. "Reparations for the damages caused by your empire, and most importantly, a guarantee that aggressive conquest will never happen again." "And if we refuse?" General Morthic asked, though his green skin had paled to almost white with fear. Colonel Martinez answered from Earth's command center. "Then the rebellions continue until there's nothing left of your empire. You've seen what humans can do when we're defending our home. Imagine what we can do when we're fighting for the freedom of an entire galaxy." The negotiations continued for 3 days, while fighting raged across Zephyrian space. On world after world, resistance fighters emerged from hiding to claim their freedom. Human ships provided support where needed, but mostly the rebellion succeeded through the courage of people who had been oppressed for too long. Dr. Lisa Parker worked with scientists from dozens of species to share technology and knowledge that had been hoarded by the Empire. The quantum communication system that Dr. Turner had developed became the foundation for a new galactic network that connected all free worlds. Chief engineer Kate Morrison led teams that dismantled Imperial weapons and converted them into tools for rebuilding. The same factories that had built warships for conquest now produced medical equipment and farming machinery for worlds devastated by war. Admiral Kethver made a choice that surprised everyone. The old warrior requested permission to join the human-led alliance as an advisor and representative of Zephyrians who opposed the Empire's aggressive policies. "My people made a terrible mistake," Kethver told Admiral Clark during a private meeting. "We became so focused on conquest that we forgot why civilizations should exist. Humans fight for something greater than power. You fight for freedom and the right to choose your own path." The formal surrender ceremony took place on Nexus Prime, the former capital of the Zephyrian Empire. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to witness the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that guaranteed the rights of all species to govern themselves. Emperor Vexilon, now just another prisoner awaiting trial for war crimes, watched from his cell as the galaxy he had once ruled celebrated its liberation. The irony was not lost on him that humans, the species he had dismissed as primitives, had become the leaders of galactic civilization. Commodore Rodriguez received promotion to Admiral in command of the new Stellar Alliance fleet. His first mission was not conquest, but exploration, seeking out new worlds and species to invite into the growing alliance of free peoples. "We're not building an empire," Rodriguez told his officers during their first mission briefing. "We're building something better. A community where every species has a voice and every world has the right to choose its own future." Dr. Parker became the first director of Galactic Sciences, leading research teams that included the best minds from across the galaxy. Without the restrictions imposed by imperial control, scientific advancement accelerated at an incredible pace. New technologies emerged that benefited everyone, not just military applications. Lieutenant Commander Bell established the Galactic Intelligence Service, not to spy on potential enemies, but to monitor for signs of oppression and help species in need. The same psychological warfare techniques used against the Empire now served to prevent conflicts before they could start. 1 year after the war's end, Admiral Clark stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Council Station, orbiting the former Imperial capital. Ships from hundreds of worlds traveled peacefully through space that had once known only war and conquest. Admiral Kethver joined her at the observation window, his old warrior scars visible in the starlight. The Zephyrian had become one of humanity's most trusted advisors, helping to integrate former Imperial forces into the new galactic order. "Do you ever regret it?" Kethver asked. "Your people could have become conquerors yourselves. You had the power to build your own empire." Admiral Clark smiled as she watched a group of young beings from different species playing together in the station's recreation area. Human children laughed alongside Altarian youngsters and Zephyrian youth, all learning to see each other as friends rather than enemies. "Power isn't about controlling others," she replied. "Real power comes from helping others control their own destiny. The Empire tried to rule through fear and force. We choose to lead through example and cooperation." The galaxy had learned a lesson that would be remembered for generations. Admiral Kethvar's warning about underestimating humanity had proven prophetic, but not in the way anyone expected. Humans were dangerous not because they were savage warriors, but because they carried something the Empire had lost long ago, the belief that freedom was worth fighting for. In schools across the galaxy, children of all species learned about the war that ended an empire and began a new age of cooperation. They studied human tactics and technology, but more importantly, they learned about human values, courage, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. The story became legend, told wherever beings gathered, to remember how a small blue planet had changed the course of galactic history. And in that legend, one lesson echoed through the stars: never underestimate the power of those who fight for freedom, because they fight with the strength of those who have everything to lose and everything to gain.